While a few people were playing outdoors, they unexpectedly discovered, from the footage transmitted by the drone, that hidden within an abandoned car graveyard, there was a neglected dragline excavator. This immediately piqued their interest. They immediately set off to check it out. As they got closer, they noticed that the large boom of the excavator had already been bent completely, but this still didn't deter their urge to take it away. After clearly setting their target, they immediately entered the cabin to assess the situation. They found that inside the cabin was a Detroit engine. This instantly gave them confidence. The tense atmosphere immediately relaxed. After all, Detroit engines are famous for their reliability. Moreover, Hill found that the condition of the cabin was much better than expected. For instance, as they examined the turbocharger on the side, they did not find any significant abnormalities. At this moment, the only thing left to determine was the condition of the engine. So they opened the valve cover. They found no obvious issues. The only discovery was some debris inside, so they did a simple cleaning. Then they reinstalled the valve cover. Next, they began inspecting the control components in the cabin, checking whether any parts were rusted or jammed. Fortunately, the clutch was still functioning normally. It had not been completely corroded by rust over the years of abandonment. After a thorough inspection inside and out, they had essentially ruled out mechanical failures. This was good news for them. So they took a battery from the vehicle and prepared to try to start the engine. However, for safety, Hill double-checked. He checked the control cables inside the cabin. Then he checked the oil levels in the joints. The oil between the gears also indicated that there would be enough to start the engine soon. Meanwhile, his friends began to check if the engine fan was jammed. Additionally, since the boom was bent and deformed, they also took care to inspect the large arm. This careful inspection helped them ensure the safety and functionality of the equipment. Now everything seemed ready for the next steps. They began to prepare for the engine's test startup. The team felt a sense of anticipation and excitement as they proceeded. The steel cables above were still taut, so they had to cut these cables to prevent any uncontrollable factors when starting. After completing all the preparations, they could attempt to awaken the Detroit engine in the cabin with the push of the start button. The engine in the cabin immediately roared deeply. This made them extremely happy. After all, as long as the engine started, it already counted as more than half of the success. Then a friend increased the throttle, and a large amount of smoke poured out of the exhaust pipe. From the sound it produced, it was easy to tell that the engine was in excellent condition. There was no sign of any problems that would be difficult to salvage after all these years of abandonment. Upon seeing that the engine could run steadily, the friend turned off the engine. After all, they didn't know whether the fuel in the fuel tank was sufficient. Moreover, parts like the filter had not been replaced. But Hill didn't think the same way. Because inside the cabin was a Detroit engine, he did not hesitate to awaken the engine once more. He then increased the throttle again, letting the engine, which had been dormant for over 20 years, release all of its emotions. At this moment, from this angle, you can see the gear assembly in the cabin beginning to rotate. This proved that the components inside the cabin could be used in subsequent operations. So the two tried to find a way to control the gear assembly. After all, neither of them had ever dealt with such a steel machine from decades ago. However, both had rich repair experience, so finding the driving method was just a matter of time. So they gradually eased the engine again, and the gear wheels in the cabin began to rotate normally. Seeing that the engine and the gear assembly were both functioning, the two tried to get the excavator moving. With the friend's control, the tracks of the excavator began to move. However, due to the abandonment, the tracks appeared to be damaged. After moving back and forth a few times, the excavator's stuck tracks were finally freed, and the machine was able to move forward once more. The long-forgotten excavator had found a second chance. as the exhaust pipe expelled a thick cloud of smoke. The excavator broke free from its restraints and began to move. However, due to the increased throttle speed, the cabin was filled with a haze of smoke. The two had no choice but to step outside for some fresh air. Afterward, they returned to the cabin and the driver's seat. They were ready to power through the thick weeds. Fortunately, this was an aluminum track excavator and not a wheeled vehicle. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to move through these waist-high weeds, thanks to the tracks. With their combined effort, they also released the excavator's rotating mechanism. This immediately made the atmosphere inside the cabin more lively. After all, this meant they could now drive the excavator normally. But now they faced a new issue. The narrow country road on the left was privately built by the junkyard itself. It did not allow their excavator to enter. So they had to drive the excavator to the parking lot on the right. Then they would proceed with the loading operation. Though it was only a short distance, the excavator's machinery was not yet fully functional. So getting it to the parking lot wasn't going to be easy. They had not moved more than a few meters when they encountered a white sedan in the grass ahead. Due to the lack of proper control, they had to remove it from the weeds. The simplest method now was to drive straight over the sedan. So they increased the throttle. The tracks quickly crushed the car, and the sedan's rear end was flattened under the tracks. However, the engine in the cabin couldn't immediately overcome the resistance. So they had to adjust the angle and increase the throttle again. Finally, when they were about to drive over the car's roof, the track started to slip again. This time, they encountered another obstacle. What made it even more difficult to accept was that the large arm suddenly detached from the excavator. This undoubtedly added more difficulty to their task. After all, the large arm was now completely uncontrollable. If things kept going like this, the arm would soon touch the ground, becoming the biggest obstacle to their journey back. The machine could no longer move. The group had no choice but to turn off the engine. They decided to plan carefully. They needed to find the best solution. In the end, they gave up on the rescue operation for the day. They prepared to return with more tools and equipment, and then they would take it back.